Welcome to PW Music. I'm Dr. Patrick Englert, and if you're still here, thanks for sticking around once again. I hope that the performance portion of this video is helpful in your preparation, but we're continuing on with our 2025 All-State Etude resource video journey, and in this video, we're focusing on the third selection for the Texas All-State program, and that is the Allegro by Heinze on page 17 of the Voxman Selected Studies. So for the other videos, we talk about some more specific things in those etudes. But for this etude, since articulation plays such a large part of it, I wanted to focus on just some general tips for articulation, since that seems to be one of the most difficult things that people have with approaching the clarinet. And it's something that we can all work on across the board, whether we're developing it, refining it, or just making sure we're getting as consistent as possible. If you listen to the beginning of this video, you probably heard a couple of squeaks and squawks, maybe a couple finger flubs here and there. And I did try to get a take that was as clean as possible to have a good listening example. But those couple of mistakes really, I think, highlight how articulation can add another dimension of difficulty. And that's the approach I would urge you to take in preparing this etude, is that articulation is a difficult thing. Adding in tongue motion adds in a lot of variables, and sometimes we may not be in complete control of that, especially if we're working on refining our articulation. So, if you can approach it from that mindset, think of the long-term goal of we're going to use this etude to help get our articulation cleaner and faster and more under our control. And so even if you don't have success with this etude, you're still challenging yourself, you're still learning, you're still building. And if we take that long-term approach, even if you do have success, even if you don't, we're still getting something out of practicing and preparing this etude. So let's get into a couple tips for articulation in general that should help when preparing this etude. The first one is what I call the golden rule of articulation, and that is tip of the tongue, tip of the reed. So as simple as it sounds, the tip of the tongue, like if we say like a T or a D, and the tip of the reed, and that's as we look at it, not like in the top where the space between the reed and the mouthpiece are, but on the face of the reed. So the second one is we want to remember to be as light as possible. And this is why we want to use the tip of the tongue, tip of the reed. This gives us the most control and allows us to be very light. So you may have heard it in band before, the faster you go, the lighter you need to go. So the faster we go doesn't mean we need to play these notes as short as possible. When we play faster and we play lighter, the listener will hear the notes being separate, even though we may not be playing it as short and chicken pecky as we can. When we play slow, we can really get really short and separated and kind of that chicken peck staccato. The faster we go, we kind of need to leave that behind, since that's going to be putting more tension in our tongue and making our tongue kind of hit the reed rather than touch the reed, which is what we want when we're going faster. The third thing, and this is when we're working on getting to the tip of the tongue and being light, is we kind of need to separate the front and the back of our tongue. So the front is responsible for articulation. And that's why as we can get closer to the tip of the tongue, we have more control and we are moving less of our tongue. The back of our tongue is responsible for kind of jumping in with the voicing. So if you remember back to when you were learning, you think your teacher probably told you think like E, where the back of your tongue is high in your mouth, and so it's like you can feel it on your molars or on the roof of your mouth. So we need to separate those. When we're articulating, we don't want the back moving. The squeaks and squawks come from the back moving around and adjusting our voicing so that those squeaks and squawks creep in. So as much as we can, separate the front and the back of your tongue. Now that sounds a lot more complicated than it really is. We don't need to actually think too hard about this. One thing that you can watch for that will tell you if you're moving the back of your tongue is when you're articulating, if you can see your tongue muscle under here moving in and out. So if it looks like you're a bullfrog croaking, that means the back of your tongue is moving and your tongue is too heavy. So work on lightening up your tongue and trying to keep that back of your tongue still and not move this portion here. And if you look in a mirror and think about making that happen, that'll help you a lot when you can see it and get the feedback rather than just trying to feel it. Last, here's an exercise that you can work on to help with the finger and tongue alignment. So a problem that can arise is not that our tongue is actually too slow, though that's sometimes the case. What happens is our fingers are moving at the last possible moment rather than the first possible moment. So for this, I suggest what I heard as a prepared finger study. So what this is we articulate as short as possible and move our finger to the next note as quickly as possible. So an example right from the beginning. So if you watch that a couple times, you'll see that as I articulate each note, my fingers are moving to the next pitch immediately as soon as I cut that first note off. And that trains us to move our fingers quickly to the next thing rather than waiting until the last second. And if you can practice that slowly, if you haven't done this before, you'll probably find this a little bit of a brain teaser. But if you can practice that slowly and get that under your fingers, you'll find that once you speed it back up, your fingers are being trained to move quickly. And so you'll be prepared and your tongue and fingers will be more aligned than previously. So that about wraps it up with my general tips for articulation. Hopefully those will help you in your preparation of this etude. As always, if there's something that I missed or something that you have a question about, don't be afraid to drop a comment. Be sure to subscribe to catch all the other videos we'll be doing in the All-State preparation series, and happy practicing.